When you think of witches, what comes to mind? Pointy hats, broomsticks, cauldrons bubbling over with mysterious potions. Hollywood has painted a picture of witches that is both dramatic and wildly inaccurate. But beyond the fantasy, there is a deeper and more complex history of witchcraft, one shaped by fear, power struggles, and society control. Today, we're breaking down why historical accuracy matters when discussing witchcraft, and how the myths of Hollywood perpetuate a disservice to the real history. One of the most well-known examples of witchcraft in history is the Salem witch trials of 1692. Hollywood often portrays these events as mass hysteria, fueled by an irrational fear of the supernatural.
Your Honor, I must have these sticks to walk with. How may I come through a window?
But you could have sent out your spirit through a window, could you not?
Films like The Crucible emphasize paranoia, but they simplify a much deeper and more troubling history. The reality is that the Salem witch trials were driven by power struggles, economic tensions, and misogyny rather than actual belief in witchcraft. Mary Beth Norton's In the Devil's Snare reveals how these trials were deeply intertwined with King William's War, a conflict that left Massachusetts Bay Colony in a state of panic. Meanwhile, Paul Boyer and Stephen Nissenbaum, Salem's Possessed highlights the economic and familial disputes that played a significant role in shaping the accusations. For instance, many of the accused were women who owned property, which made them easy targets for men seeking financial or social gains. Court testimonies like those of Ann Putman Jr. reveal that these accusations were often rooted in personal vendettas rather than supernatural fears.
Hear me, O Lucifer! Hear me! Making a curse! Curse!
While Salem often takes center stage in discussions about witch hunts, the European witch trials were far more devastating. According to the English Heritage website, between 15th and 18th centuries, an estimated 30,000 to 60,000 people were executed for witchcraft, with women making up the overwhelming majority of these victims. But that's only 25% of those that were tried across the period and were found guilty and executed. Historian Brian P. Levack, in The Witch Hunt in Early Modern Europe, explains how these executions were the results of religious turmoil, shifting legal systems, and deeply ingrained misogyny.
Do you believe I'm a witch, Payman? You're not afraid of me, are you?
One of the biggest myths Hollywood promotes is the idea that the accused witches were all practicing some form of magic with the devil. In reality, many of these women were midwives, herbalists, or simply women who defied their social expectations. Christina Larner's research on Scottish witch hunts revealed that accusations were often politically motivated.
Yeah, I bet. She has got a wart.
What makes you think she's a witch?
Well, she turned me into a newt.
A newt?
The Catholic Church's influence, particularly through the Malleus Maleficarum, further fueled these fears, branding independent women as the most dangerous.
What's going on?
I'm going to ask Grams what's going on, actually.
Grams?
From the green-skinned Wicked Witch of the West to the alluring witches of Charmed, Hollywood has continuously reinforced stereotypes that erase the complexities of historical witchcraft. Take the pointy hat, for example. This imagery likely stems from the 17th century Puritan fashion. The infamous flying broomstick? Historian Ronald Hutton, in The Triumph of the Moon, traces its origins to fertility rituals, rather than devil worship. Hollywood's insistence on portraying witches as either villains or mystical heroines obscures the real suffering endured by those accused of witchcraft. The erasure is dangerous because it distorts our understanding of history, turning real injustices into more entertainment. Hollywood hasn't just shaped the images of witches, it's also reignited fears surrounding witchcraft in modern culture. Movies and television series such as The Craft, American Horror Story Coven, and The Witch, also with the revival of Sabrina, have played a significant role in reviving public fascination with witches. While these portrayals often lean towards empowerment and supernatural storytelling, they also tap into historical fears. The rise of satanic panic in the 1980s was fueled by media-driven hysteria, and it mirrored earlier witch hunts in its baseless accusations and moral panic. More recently, social media has further amplified both the embrace of witchcraft as a spiritual movement and the persistent fear of occult practices. Conservative movements and conspiracy theories have revived notions of secretive, malevolent witches manipulating society, echoing centuries-old fears of hidden covens and dark magic. According to the Pew Research Center Religious Projections Report, interest in non-traditional religious practices, including Wicca and various forms of neo-paganism, has been steadily rising, and a lot of that is due to pop culture. The report estimates by 2050 the number of people identifying with a non-Christian faith, including modern witchcraft practices, will continue to grow. This shift has been influenced by both the rejection of organized religion and the mainstreaming of occult symbolism through pop culture. The rise of social media platforms like TikTok has further accelerated interest in witchcraft, with young people embracing it as both a spiritual and aesthetic movement.
Fine time for my powers to get clogged up. Samantha, I learned something very important a long time ago. When a man asks for help from a woman, especially by not asking for help, the best thing for her to do is to forget about the whole thing. Sure.
Ensuring historical accuracy in media representations of witchcraft requires a commitment to research and responsible storytelling. Historians, researchers, and filmmakers should collaborate to depict events in ways that respect the lives that had experienced those events. This means moving away from sensationalized depictions and incorporating scholarly work that reflects the complexities of historical events. But my question to you is, would you still watch? Encouraging critical thinking about how history is presented in media can help future generations recognize distortions and seek out more accurate narratives. Museums, historical societies, and digital archives can also provide valuable resources to correct misconceptions. By preserving and sharing primary documents, court records, and personal testimonies from accused witches, these institutions ensure that history is told with nuance rather than a simplified Hollywood narrative. Scholars such as Diane Purkis in The Witch in History and Malcolm Gaskill in Witchfinders, a 17th century English tragedy, emphasize how understanding the socio-political context of witch hunts is crucial in dismantling long-standing myths. Historical accuracy isn't just about getting the facts right, and it isn't just about witchcraft. It's about honoring the people who lived through events within history. Many accused witches were victims of systemic injustice, and by reducing their stories to caricatures, we risk erasing their humanity. In Scotland, for example, the Witches of Scotland campaign has been working to secure legal pardons and create a national memorial for those executed under the Witchcraft Act of 1563. While those members of society won't know of their pardons, it does help society heal in the long term. These efforts highlight an ongoing importance of acknowledging historical wrongs. Recognizing the realities of past witch hunts also allows us to see how similar patterns of fear and misogyny and scapegoating continue to manifest in modern society. Additionally, witchcraft is experiencing a resurgence, not as something to fear, but as a cultural and spiritual practice. From Wicca to African diasporic religions, many modern witches embrace traditions rooted in history rather than Hollywood's fabrications, but some still get wrapped up in Hollywood's lies. Understanding the true history of witchcraft allows us to appreciate it as a complex and deeply humane phenomenon, rather than a fantasy trope. If you liked what you learned today, I'd love to continue the discussion over on my Patreon at Occultorium Historian. at patreon.com.